I know people have a lot of things to do. So hello, everyone. Thank you. Super. So let's call this meeting to order at 12:03. And we have quorum, but I'll take a roll call. Tim Bonfatti.
Here.
Tim Knight.
Here.
And Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke here, and that'll be great. Okay, super. So if we could just table the minutes again, that's okay. I think that's not the priority today. And would you like me to share the screen to go over the plan that you sent this morning? Should I do that? Let's make sure I can do that. Oh,
Anna Mae, I've been on the run, so yeah, if it's something like that, if there's material or whatnot, having someone share just makes it easier.
Yeah, no, of course, I'll do that. Owen, can you pretty please allow me to share screen?
I was going to say, I think I have, Tina, I have Rev 2. Is that the most recent?
No, actually, Lynn had put together,
okay, so
reshuffled some of the slides, so she actually has the most recent, which I think was sent over to Anna Mae. Is that right?
Okay.
Okay, that's cool. I just want to, hey, Owen.
Hello there.
Hi, could you pretty please allow me to share screen?
Yeah, so I've made you a co-host, so you should be all set now. And I've also...
Oh, Shazam.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, beautiful. All right. So
and we're now seeing your screen.
Sorry?
We are seeing your screen.
Oh, goody. Okay, great. So cool. So do you folks want to walk us through this?
Yeah, so well, I'll just start, and then Larry and Tina, you guys can jump in. So the intro and is the agenda and the timeline. And the timeline is something that we've shown in the past. It just shows where we are in the process. And the agenda, we could just get that from you, Anna Mae.
Okay, yep.
And then we could jump into the grade configuration. Now, what I sent you just recently, it kind of gives an outline for how we could possibly tackle the grade configuration, but we can get into that after. We could continue going through the slides.
Okay, all right.
So I'm sure I'm out of the loop a bit, but so the purpose of this community forum is to get community feedback to inform or to help the school committee make their decision about grade configuration, right? Primarily?
Yes, to take that deep dive to explore the grade configuration options and give folks time and then get back to us. Yes, but we're not going to do a full-on survey.
Right. So I just would, when you talk about the agenda, I would talk about it, framing it in what you're trying to get out of the meeting versus sort of like, just like a desired outcome.
Okay.
Which in this case seems to me to be, you know, feedback and feedback on, you know, that helps the school committee, help inform the school committee decision making.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you.
You know what? I'm going to just step back for a second. And Anna Mae, I think the outline that I just gave you, maybe if we look at that.
Yeah, no, I think that's helpful.
And then, because I think what happened is we addressed some of the concerns that people had with what may have been missing in the first public forum. So I think if we try to address it here, I think it makes a lot of sense. So
can you guys see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, you see the important considerations?
Yep.
Yes.
Good. Okay, great. Alrighty. So our benefits, larger flexibility, advantages of grade config.
So it'd be good to get the feedback from you guys on this, and then we can start to see how the slides incorporate some of this, or how maybe we need to incorporate some other things in the slides instead of what's there to support this. If this makes sense.
Is the plan, Anna Mae, for you? Who's going to lead off the present, like sort of start the whole thing? In other words, so is it to say to people, you know, we're at a point in the process where we need to make a decision by September,
Yeah.
and we have two major components of that decision. One is the grade configuration, i.e. the size and cost of the school. And secondly is the site. And we have moved the project to a point where the grade configuration, which is largely going to be determined by school committee, will impact probably to some extent the second discussion around site, because different, you know, so I just think, like, who's going to make that sort of contextualizing statement in the beginning to get people to?
Yes, so that I mean I'm happy to, or Jeff, I mean, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think it should be probably either you or Jeff, but I don't know.
And I think it's more appropriate coming from the school committee than the superintendent. The superintendent is an influencer, but officially not a decision maker.
Okay, beautiful. All right.
I think that's right.
Okay, good. I'll do that. Great. Thank you. That's
But
even
just
that.
people, you know, all the people watching, assuming, let's say we hopefully get a good turnout, you know, gives them an idea of what they're supposed to be looking for, where they are in the process.
Good.
And what we're hoping to show them tonight to get feedback on that.
No, that's helpful language, Tim. So thank you for framing that for us. All right.
Yeah, in Anna Mae, I'm not, any of these I'm able to support without, you know, like, I'm not trying to sign you up for a whole bunch of stuff. If you, any of those, I'm not dying to it. I'm not signing up, but I'm not pushing work. Like, between us, if you want support and help from the school committee with this, I will play it whatever role is needed.
Super. And you know what, and Leo, he's part of this. So I think once we have our framework, we can get him into the mix as well.
Yeah, he would be, you and Leo wear the hat sitting on both groups, but however, you know, I'm whatever we need.
No, that's
bottom line, I totally agree. Kick it off. Why are we here? And let's be pointed.
Yeah.
Right. Look, so because we don't want to answer a whole bunch of stuff that's, you know, we have a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. Thank you. All right.
No, the only other thing, it's a little different because the 13th anime, again, this is part of a school committee meeting, correct?
Correct.
So whereas the other public forum, it was the only thing we were doing, and it went on for multiple hours. We would rather it be, you know, kind of compressed into an hour, or, you know, 60 to 90.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Good point. Thank you. 60, 90 minutes. Yeah. All right. Very good. All right. These slide suggestions. You know, back to Tracy's point where she said it a couple of meetings ago, she feels that, you know, school committee has not really made an argument or justifiable argument to really go for the 3, 4, 5. So I think really what's going to drive this, in my personal opinion, is the cost. And so I think Gina have cost estimates come out yet? I know they were coming out any day now. We have our meeting next week.
Yep. We've got all of the estimates and we're compiling them now and putting them together. And we're going to have them ready and organized so that they can be presented at the SBC meeting on the 12th.
Okay. All right. And really today, you know, Tim Bonfatti, I'm really looking to you for guidance on this and what you think. You know, this is what you do. And so any advice is this, are we going in the right direction? Am I making the right assumption in thinking really cost is going to define this?
I know in the presentation Gina sent out, I went through, it has a series of cost slides, which I assume are based on, those will be updated based on these new numbers. But I think that, you know, I think if the purpose of the meeting is to get feedback for the grade configuration, when's school committee making that decision again?
We vote on the 27th of August.
Yeah. So then I think that, like, I think the presentation should be a half an hour to 40 minutes and not much more.
Okay.
And then try to get feedback on those issues. So I think this starts with a discussion on the grade config. If you go back to that presentation, Gina, that you sent, or whoever's got control.
Oh, I can do that. Is this it? Yeah, here.
So it starts with the grade configuration. So when you talk to people about that, you've got these, I mean, independent of what these slides actually say, but in terms of the topic, the grade configuration of, you know, and then those other slides that might supplement this that we were just looking at. Logistics, yeah, this is all about context, right? We're here, but somehow I think, if you go to the next one, is there one that gives a time frame? Like, I think you should have, Gina, a slide that, a timeline of some sort that tells people the urgency of this decision, because these are just saying where we are in the process.
Yeah.
But they're not actually saying, you know, leading toward the town vote in the spring, we need the decision in September of this in order for Arrow Street to finish what they need for the submission in the December, and then town meeting in the spring.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so I think you could use a timeline of some sort that lays out, and I don't know, Larry, if you want to help, you know, graphically or whatever, but lays out that you need a decision on the preferred option in September in order to be able to be ready to submit the schematic design report in January.
Yeah, I think, so it's basically a list of dates through the end of August and September, sorry, August, September, and October when we're submitting the PSR, so that, to your point, Tim, we're just highlighting the fact that it's decision time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that building up that urgency is an important thing in getting people to focus. So, you know, what I found graphically does a good job of that is kind of a timeline that has an end point, which in this case is town meeting in the spring or town decision in the spring. But it also has a point in, I think it's when are we looking at? We're trying to go for a board vote in February, the MSBA board.
Let's see, submission of the PSR is October, and we're assuming the December board meeting.
For the PSR, but what about the schematic design?
Oh, then schematic starts in January and continues through the spring. I don't have those dates in my head, but you know, towards the end of spring.
Are we going for a fall? When are we going for a town vote for the project?
I've understood fall of.
Oh, fall. Okay.
Is that Bush?
Yeah.
What?
We've got all that.
Bush.
Yeah. So
okay, I got so many. We're dealing with so many.
So
this
this
one
will be
is
helpful.
this one is the fall of 21.
And we're having a special town meeting. Is that it? I think.
I will get all of those dates listed, and then I'll figure it out graphically how to show that. But we'll do that, and we can replace these slides with those things. With that.
So no to this slide, no to this slide, and we're replacing it with a timeline.
Yes. Yeah.
Just
I almost
lay out for people what is the time frame of what we're doing is important.
Yeah.
So, and what it sounds like is there's two parts to it. One is the longer view, which is getting to town meeting in the fall of next year, and the other is the shorter time frame of getting through a decision in the next 8 weeks.
Right.
So maybe there's two slides there. So you got, here's the big picture, and then here's the
Yeah, we often do that sort of idea where you have the long one and then you pull out the sort of short one and inflate and blow that up.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's,
I think if we're trying to keep it 30 or 40 minutes, let's stay focused on the agenda, but it almost could be introduction. What are the three things you're doing? And a visual aid to the right on that slide that just says, here's major milestones and a big circle around the vote like that. Because otherwise, like stuff like this, we get into places that we could go, but you know, that's not why we're there. So it's like, it could just be in one, right in your introduction. We do that a lot. Here's the visual aid. This is, you know, anime. That's kind of the opening remarks.
Yeah, I don't think it should take more than 2 minutes to orient people of where we are and what we're trying to, you know, just always remind people of what's the context they're operating under. Because otherwise, it's just a lot of information of no context. So the time context, I don't think should take more than a minute and a half. I mean,
Right, it shouldn't, yeah.
More like what we use.
So you could use like what Tim suggests and do it even within the within the opening, just to sort of say, here's where we are in the process, and you know, we're looking to some urgency to get a decision in order to stay on schedule in September.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like I think it's a 2-minute point.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I think just reacting, Tim, to your point, given the fact that a lot of folks are looking at small screens, I would just make them independent slides. And then anime, if you're walking it through, just walk through quickly to Tim Bonfati's point. But I think if we put a lot of things on a slide, it works great if it's, you know, projected in a big room. But on people's computers, we've been noticing that sort of single issue slides seem to go better.
Okay.
More like the news flash. Like when we created it, we want to just, here's a bit, okay,
Right.
Got it. This is where
Exactly.
we are. That's like that kind of concept.
Yep.
So,
Beautiful. All right. So that we've seen this before.
Yeah, so that's another thing too. I did ask Arrow Street to just put in there everything that we've shown up to this point on grade configuration. So there's a lot of stuff in there that we can whittle down.
Okay.
But you know, Anime, getting back to Tracy's point about when she said, you know, the school committee has yet to, you know, really talk about, you know, why 3 through 5. I hate to keep going back to the other outline, but
Yeah.
if you look at those points, does this make sense that these are the points we've highlighted? And if that's the case, if we could start with this and then make sure we've got the slides to go along with that, so that we're kind of staying on task here. You know, so the educational benefits, again, this was something that's been in the ed plan, right? So these benefits can just be listed, and this was talked about at the first forum.
Right.
So that's fine. But then the advantages of a larger building, you know, justifying it, you know, the points about flexibility in uncertain town population, allowing for expansion with services, which we did talk about a little bit with the expansion of pre-K and K, provides opportunity to reduce for the number of buildings in the future. I don't know how much we want to stay on that, but again, these are just all, you know, reasons for the 3-grade configuration. And then cost, of course, is huge too. So that's something you want to take into consideration. So there was something that's about the, about a larger school is, it's a lower cost per student seat with a larger configuration. So these are things that we're throwing around. So the operating cost of school systems, on a combined, on a larger school. So if you just look at those things, does this make sense to you all? Is this something that we should build on?
I say, I love it. Like, I think you're a lot closer to the narrative that we're describing. Like, I'm more talking slide 2 as a baseline. What I do wonder though is that narrative. It's hard to speak to the advantages of a 3-grade config if you don't speak to the disadvantages, or have, and I, we do need to say if, and I still am not there. I need feedback, right? Like, why would I vote for the 3-grade? Why would I vote for the 2-grade? And admittedly, we flipped, because I think sometimes people said we're waiting for the school committee to say one way or the other. Given the economic environment, I think
exactly.
there is a certain degree that I'm saying, we are, the feedback portion of this meeting is important,
Right.
because, you know, I may lean one way or the other, but I want to hear what the town has to say.
Right.
So that's the only thing. I don't know whether you call it 2A and 2B, and guys, please weigh in if you don't like my direction, but it would be advantages of each, and maybe not necessarily disadvantages like that. And Anna Mae, I don't know if you want to be the one to, like, you know, what do you agree, or do you how do you feel about it?
No, I suppose, these are just difficult times. I just, I have I'm going through my own thought process through this, and what are the educational benefits, but what can the town tolerate in light of this pandemic? So I do want to make sure this is a fair comparison, to your point, the advantages and disadvantages. That's why I think that the cost and those realities really have to be delved into, because the ultimate goal.
I think that these slides are I do think that we need to get to these slides here, these two big slides, and whether it's, the advantages of each is sort of side by side, whatever they are, and then the cost considerations is its own thing. I do think these are the gist of where you want to go versus some of the other, like that one that we just saw in the presentation, which had the different, how Medfield school system would look like under a 3 grade or a 2 grade, it had which schools go where, which kids go where. I think that's fine, just to sort of remind people that what a 3 grade school means is that grades 3, 4, and 5. But again, that's 30 seconds. Like, that slide just goes right through. People, first of all, if they're paying attention, and the only people probably going to join this are people who've been paying attention, they'll know that anyway. So I would move quickly, and then you do get to this, something that deals with these issues that are here, and I think that's. In the end, that's probably going to be the meat of the issue of these two topics.
Yeah.
I mean, in some level, you got to get through this and get feedback. But again, you're still not going to get. You're going to get a very small, infinitesimal amount of feedback. In the end, its school committee is going to have to exercise their judgment about what they think the town's going to want to do in a year from now. And I have my opinion about that, but I'm just saying, I think you want to get through this stuff quickly to get to feedback from the people, but it's not gonna shine an answer. I don't think it's gonna be still the same things we all know is happening now. But anyway, I think that's the right track.
My observation just simply is the work that's in the other slides seem more kind of neutrally presented. Here's option 1 and here's option 2. And these two slides start to talk about forming an opinion and trying to lead people to that opinion. And I'm not sure where you want to be on that sliding scale. If you're trying to present things option 1, option 2, then it feels to me like we kind of need to put them side by side, and whether they're more compressed than what we've done in the past is the question. But if you're really trying to push,
I think this is why this should go further down in the presentation under the considerations after we've gone through the neutral grade, the 2 grade options from a neutral standpoint. And then at the end, right before we get into the nitty gritty on cost, this is considerations taken from, where, this is more leading you toward where you want to go with the final answer.
I'm leaving it. I really am gonna rest on you guys who have done this.
Yeah, I think the data point, like getting the actual revisiting, making sure we see the financials, although I have a funny feeling, you said you'll have them next week. I don't think they're going to drastically change from what you've been talking about all along.
Right.
I just think we need to, we do have to decide, do we want to go in and say, let's have the discussion about the most meaty topics. If I were to make a case for a 2-grade configuration, these were the things that I think would be really relevant and why I might do that. If I were to make a case for a 3-grade configuration, these are the things that, you know, I'm excited about. It somewhat blends what you guys described as neutral. Mm-hmm. It does allow that. That's fair, and you know, I think that's reasonable. But it still, it keeps it a little more net. And you know, while we're at it, let's actually make sure we do understand the cost considerations.
All right. So it sounds like we like the ideas behind these slides. So these can be developed. Is that what I'm hearing? Should I go back to
the presentation? Yeah.
Okay. So as Tim Bonfatti just cruised through these, people should know. Absolutely.
Right. So these next 2 slides are what I was mentioning, is they're really trying to be essentially neutral information about each of the 2 configurations, advantages and disadvantages. And I think it might be how you present them. You could leave this information on the screen and somebody's presenting it. I think Tim Knight, the way you were saying it, if I were going to talk about the advantages of a 2-grade configuration, here's the big points for me. That could be a nice approach to it. I think it really depends on how the tenor of how you want that information to be received by the folks who are listening. In other words, you could go through this very neutrally. Here's the advantages, here's the disadvantages. Here's the advantages, here's the disadvantages.
Yeah, and I think Anna, we are, you know, I think you say you guys do this, we have to decide it. We may require a little bit more of a, let's make a decision. Because if it is more neutral, you know, then I'd point more, Larry, to yourself or somebody, you know, directly on it, because that is appropriate. You know, the question I would ask as we prepare for the meeting is, has anything of substance changed since we did these advantages, disadvantages back a couple months ago? You don't have to answer it right away, but we would want to polish them and make sure it's still, you know, it's a good representation.
That's a great question. Yeah.
But
what's changed since our last forum?
Yeah, and I think if I recall, these 2 slides Jeff presented. Again, sort of here's the ups and downs. Certainly, you know, whether it's you guys presenting this or us presenting it as the sort of professionals, either is fine from my standpoint. Or left field can present
that, because I think school committee is making a decision. So this is where I'm not so sure school committee should be presenting these slides.
Okay. So again, this is information presented to the school committee that's consistent, and
or maybe this is a Jeff, or this is one of you guys. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think this has to come from the school committee.
Okay. Okay. Jeff or me or Leo?
I think maybe this is a Jeff discussion, because he's presenting to you his thoughts on the 2 configurations, and he can put his own spin on it as he presents it.
Okay. As educational benefits. Okay. All right. Okay, so same thing, instructional considerations.
Again, I think he has presented these in the past.
Okay.
And is this too deep in the weeds?
What is that slide again? Because like I'm looking at that as a lot of,
It's a dense slide.
Yeah,
it's very dense. I mean, to me,
begin with.
To the extent, do we need it, first of all, but if we do, it needs to be really done in a more bullet, but like, I don't know whether you need it.
Yeah, I would try to bring the content from there into that advantages.
Yeah, into the other ones, yeah.
I do, Like, I think there's the educational perspective, what allows us to give, the best education. Then there is those others that may not be so much as Jeff. As a townsperson, it may be to your advantage to go larger building now because it allows you to reduce buildings later, which is not necessarily Jeff. So I think we need to digest and make, I don't know that we can make a firm decision on it right now.
Yeah, I think in the past, Jeff has put this forward as here's why he believes educationally the 3 through 5 makes sense. And he goes through and talks about it from an instruction and staffing standpoint, a curriculum and child development. So
then I think that maybe this slide goes at the back where we talk about considerations. After you've presented both grade configurations and a neutral standpoint, advantages and disadvantages, move this one to the end where you're starting to defend the preferred grade configuration.
Yeah, as you talk about that, Lynn, it also, what's the administration suggesting is best? And they've been fairly consistent. 3 grade is best. You have the neutral, call it, advantages for both, and that might be from Larry or somebody. And I almost think of this as like it probably should be a discussion amongst the school committee as to what do we think, right? Because we don't have that opportunity. This is and I'm talking out loud on it, but it could be a little more open-ended because we haven't voted, right? And I think it is okay. We've got that advantages, disadvantage. We are also could be asking some additional questions.
Is it sort of a situation where the first two slides are trying to be objective? I'm not sure they're framed that way, but trying to be objective with advantages and disadvantages of the 2 configurations. And this slide, or something that deals with this substance, is really the administration's recommendation. Mm-hmm. So the first 2 are objective, and this is the administration's recommendation. Is that kind of what this is supposed to, these 3 slides are supposed to do?
Yes, sort of. I think that maybe somebody like Leo could present the first 2 slides, and then maybe Jeff comes up on this slide and gives his recommendation for a grade 3 through 5 configuration.
I think it's a great idea.
That
it's not here.
Well, that's what he gets for missing.
Lynn, and then but we also have to consider costs. So where would that just later?
Well, that's why I was almost saying that take this slide and move it down further in the presentation where we say considerations, because that's where those 3 slides that I quickly put together that you had up when I first joined. That's where I intended for those to go, because that starts to get more specific.
Sorry, am I going the wrong way then?
No, you're going right. Keep going.
Okay. Oh, consideration.
Here you go. I had intended for those slides to come here where you're starting to get more, you've laid everything out from a educational perspective neutrally for grades 4 through 5 and grades 3 through 5. We showed them what the implications from a spatial massing, site and building layout were previous. And we showed them the traffic impacts of all of them, all from a neutral standpoint. Then when we get to considerations, that's where we dive into what the administration's recommendations are and why. And that's where I had intended those first slides that you had up on the screen to go after this. And this is where you start to focus in what your recommendations are and why.
Okay, I see.
And I apologize. I kind of I took Air Street's original presentation and kind of jumbled it up a little bit. But the point is to first talk about both everything from a neutral standpoint, and then at this point get into more specifics on your recommendation.
Well, I
And
think
then
if I,
after that, that's why the last bullet starts to talk about cost. So after that last slide, then it goes into, if you go down a little bit, then it goes into the cost implications in more detail. We have some other slides to add to that, but that'll show a comparison of all of, and then these are just slides I didn't use.
Practically though, isn't this really, it does come down to weighing the educational benefits of the grade configuration versus the cost. I mean, in the end,
yeah,
and sort of, so Jeff is going to make a recommendation from the administration to the school committee saying, I'm not dealing with cost with this, but from my perspective, I mean, I'm not insensitive to the cost, but from an educational perspective, here's the pros and cons of the two, and here's why I feel like a grade 3-5 is what I would recommend to you. The cost issue, to some extent, if I was Jeff, I would say, you know, I'm not a resident of the town. I'm not paying the taxes. You as school committee are now going to have to balance my I'm going to implement basically whatever you decide to vote on.
That's why I put cost last.
So the cost now is really a separate balancing thing in the equation you're going to measure when you vote. And so to me, like, I don't know that we need all those other ones that showed all those slides that showed the schools, because I think what we're saying is that those considerations are fairly neutral. Traffic we can deal with under either grade configuration. The building can lay out on each site, I mean, more or less, you know, it's not going to be a determinative factor. It might determine, one might prefer one site or the other. So really, I think should just be simply around, here's the pros and cons of the two grade configurations. Here's my recommendation as the superintendent and representative administration. And here's the cost that somebody else, not Jeff, should present, presumably left field, that would talk about here's what you have to balance the qualitative stuff that Jeff brought up with the quantitative math that you're seeing in front of you when you make your decision. And then it's going to be getting feedback from people. In the end, it's going to be, you're going to have to make a decision based on, you know, what do you think the public is going to politically support? They're not going to just support just because it's educationally appropriate. If it costs, you know, necessarily there are people who are going to vote their pocketbook on it. So I think that's a fairly simple presentation. The pros, the cons of each one, the district's recommendation, the administration's recommendation, and here's the cost implication of them. And then school committee is sitting there basically, you know, witnessing the presentation, absorbing it, and then that's unfortunately where the difficult decision is made, you know, 2 weeks from now when you have to balance the two. But that's it. I don't think we need to get distracted with the other stuff.
I agree wholeheartedly. The only slight shift, and we're here to, you know, educate and put the best possible, call it, product out there. I almost think it's, all right, Jeff, what's the administration's perspective and why? We're netting it out. Then again, in a more neutral way, here's the bigger factors that, you know, you guys, the folks from the building, you know, like the whole process has started that we need to think about, and there's the cost. And then it is, we want feedback from the community, but it is also, whether it's me or Jess, somebody might say, hey, I forget, can we go into a little more detail on the traffic? For example, like these are things that help us, right? And open that up to others who have questions or input.
And have those as bullpen slides that you can bring up. And
yeah, it's almost like oversimplified. It's trying to do it in 4 slides, you know, Jeff's perspective, advantages of a 2 grade, advantages of a 3 grade, or, you know, and financial, 4 slides.
I even I love, Tim Bonfatti, how you framed it in terms of the linking, all right, here's our recommendation, but then I'm not a resident of this town. This is something else you have to consider, you know? So I think that just segues beautifully into really the crux of our decision making. So I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, an intermediate bridging point is that the other factors, which are in those multiple slides about traffic and building, those I think you just need to sort of say are fairly neutral to this decision. The real thing comes down to the educational benefits and the long-term benefits of a 3-5 versus the immediate investment. And then if people have questions around traffic, you can bring up slides and talk about them, or how a building sits on the site, one configuration or the other.
Yeah.
But I think that you should just get through, like Tim was just saying. I mean, it's really, I mean, it's probably more than 4 slides, but it's really a very compact thing that you've done probably in 20 minutes, which I think is good.
Yeah.
I don't think you really want to be stretching it out with how you know, we've done a lot of that, how the building sits on the site and all
Yeah.
that. I think that's going to be for another meeting in September once you guys decide your 3-5.
And I made Tracy's trying to get in. Is Owen on? Do you know? And Owen, I don't know if you can hear me, but Tracy's been trying to get in.
Owen, can you hear us? Oh.
Yep, I've just promoted her in.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no, Tim, I think you've hit it. And to me, we could create a couple of sort of matrix slides of the site, just if you want to have them available, but not go through. Yeah, not go through each of the specific schemes and traffic. I think because you're not really trying to make a site decision or get site input on this. You're trying to get grade level configuration input.
Right.
And to your point, I think that's correct, is more or less they are neutral. We can make either site work, either configuration work on either site.
So I could conceive of an area where, for instance, if I'm just going to say it's you, Anna Mae, but maybe it's Leo or somebody, but you start off the thing with a discussion of the context of what we're trying to do today.
Yeah.
You then have Jeff talk through those educational slides along with his recommendation.
Yeah.
You then have Larry go through 1 or 2 slides that basically make the point that the decision is neutral in terms of logistics, how the building gets sited, what the traffic implications, something that leaves people with the idea, okay, that's not a factor in this right now. We'll make that decision in September, depending on what comes out of school committee. And then probably Lynn or Gina go through the cost ones just to say, balanced against these educational concerns, with the logistics being fairly neutral, we now have to deal with cost. And here's what you're dealing with cost. You're dealing with a $12 to $13 million premium, of which the town will fund 10 to 11. And that's really, you know, then it's your decision about what the town will support. And I think, you know, to me, that's it. That's the end of the slide.
Yeah.
That's the end of the presentation. And then it's question, and you might have bullpen things where somebody brings up a question, you got to roll up a slide on a particular site or something. If they do, that's fine. I think that,
I like that. I think it makes sense.
Quick.
Very clean, concise. And I think, you know, with the timeline at the beginning, I think this can.
Yeah, so one thing on this whole timeline thing though, because some of it's, I got a lot of these different projects in terms of timing, but Autumn put a question that says, it's a difference between going for spring, because Larry, I don't know how you're going to get your SD done if you get an October PSR, you have basically a month to do SD or 2 months. If it's spring, Autumn just said, what do people think we're going for a spring vote? Because she just put up I just saw a comment that said it's a spring vote, which I just don't remember what we have here in Medfield, what the last thing we were telling people, what the vote was.
Yeah, Gina or Lynn, maybe you guys can jump in, but my understanding is unless folks want us to get moving on SD sooner than the board vote, that we submit end of October, submit our PSR. That goes through the usual churn process with the MSBA, and they put us on the December board. Assuming the December board agrees with us, we're then released into SD in January. And I believe we were wrapping up SD at the end of June. I could be wrong there, but basically late spring.
We submit May for a June board.
Okay. And
So when's the
then,
vote? When's the town's vote?
So don't you vote usually in May or April or May?
So it's a spring vote. That's my point. So
Right.
if that's the case, because then that's that context of why we're making these decisions in August and September needs to be laid out. It's a big difference than saying a fall vote.
So do you see a problem asking for the vote prior to MSBA's vote at the end of June?
So
we'll know the cost and everything.
Yeah. So are you guys comfortable with the basic, before we get into timeline, because I don't want we get distracted, are you guys comfortable with laying it out the way I just sort of said it, with Anna Mae, Jeff, Larry talking neutral, and then somebody from left field talking about cost, and then that's the presentation? It's, maybe 10 slides. Well, in the first bit, Anna Mae being around context around this timeline. If we're comfortable with that, then we should now talk about the timeline.
Is Mike Quinlan going to say anything as the building?
Mike's not going to be, I don't think Mike's going to make it.
Oh, he can't.
Body is representing.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So there's somebody from the building committee. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't, I can do an introduction. I don't mind doing that, but I haven't really been that engaged or out front with it. But I don't mind if you want me to kick it off, but I would turn it over to you, Anna Mae.
Okay, yeah, no, that'd be great.
I mean, if you want, I'll do the context. I just feel like I'm not been that engaged, but anyway, you and I can talk about that. So anyways, so back to the timeline, Larry, it's if we submit the PSR in October.
Yep.
We're going to get the major meeting for the MSBA is the Facilities Assessment Subcommittee. Once you're through with that, there's no other meeting that's important. Frankly, all the rest of them are pro forma, all the other board meetings. So once they agree on the concept, you can start schematic design. So the Facilities Assessment Subcommittee, if we're looking at a December board, there is a board meeting in December, Lynn? I guess. I don't know.
yeah, that was our understanding.
So that means your Facilities Assessment Subcommittee is November. So you can start schematic design in November, comfortably knowing that it's going to it's not going to change. So once you get Facilities Assessment Subcommittee feedback. So that November, if you can be ready to have your schematic design ready for pricing in 3 months, I don't know if that's realistic, but if you can 3 or 4 months, you'd be able to say we'd have ready for pricing in February or March, March even, go out for estimators.
Is your town meeting closer to the end of April or is it in May?
First Monday in May.
So by that point, we will have already submitted the schematic design to MSBA. So we'll have everything prior to the, how far in advance do you need to know pricing for the vote?
We need to know pricing with all the prep stuff you have to do for town meeting. We probably I don't know exactly with Medfield, but in most towns it's anywhere between 6 weeks or so. You need to know the number because you got to get in front of all the different boards. So if it's the beginning of May, we would need to know pricing in March or I mean, you guys need to time it out, but it looks like it probably sort of works for maybe getting the pricing in April. And then we can use a placeholder for a while. And then eventually when they write the warrant, we have to have the actual numbers, or when they do the article.
Right. Well, we know we have to have pricing at least 2 weeks in advance of submission of the schematic design, because I have to provide notification to MSBA. So that puts us into April. So, I mean, just shorten it, getting the information a couple of weeks before that should be enough for the writing of the articles, right?
But
yeah, I mean, eventually we got to talk through all the logistics, but that kind of works. So I think but it would be nice to see that timeline. So we're using it all the time, because we've got to always go back to that, why we're making that decision. So I think if you could lay that out, Lynn, as a schedule with Larry's input on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Tim, you're bringing up an interesting question, and I think the discussion to date has been that we assumed we had missed the spring town meeting and we were heading to a fall special town meeting. I think that sounds like, from your mind, that's worth revisiting. And I think the one thing that we got to pay attention to really is, because the MSBA board vote has to reach, the project funding agreement. So they can say they're going to fund so many dollars, and then that gets presented to the voters as part of the town meeting. From my standpoint, I would agree with your timing of, we could start SD quickly following the FSB in November. I'm happy to do that. We had sort of mentally thought we were starting in January after the formal board vote on the PSR, but I agree there's relatively little risk there. And we could start earlier if the town is comfortable with that.
Right.
So from that standpoint,
I don't see any, yeah, there's no reason not to start right after the facility. Once the facilities assessment subcommittee hopefully gives us a major good job, thumbs up, where we don't need to do any more waiting around, because nothing changes between then. Everything then is all staff done. It's all teed up for the boards by staff. So I think that laying that out as the timeline, because I think our feasibility agreement is ending. I got a feeling we're going to be ending if we don't do a spring. We're going to have to get an extension from the MSBA. And I don't want to be like I'm kind of coming in on this late, but it just seems to me that if we're going to try to move this along, we should try to do it for the spring and not wait. There's a point where you can be too aggressive, but there's a point where you can be so slow. So, there's a bad thing if you extend it out too long. People lose interest in it. There's a whole bunch of things that go wrong. So
it's an interesting point, because you could also, if the April annual town meeting is tight, you could do a special town meeting in May or early June.
I think the decision on whether we do a special anyways needs to be made at some point in the future. So, I mean, most of our projects of this scale, a lot of them, we would do a special. I mean, the last school projects we did in Medfield, and most of our ones we do at Compass, we do special town meetings. I mean, they take time. Maybe it's a special within the annual, but that's a logistic thing we'll work out later with the selectmen. I think from the broad perspective, this is the timing, and this is kind of why there's some urgency to get this decision done in August of 2020, and then the final site in September.
Great.
So to your point, Tim, we should evaluate that schedule quite quickly over the next few days so that we can roll it out for folks with some degree of confidence in a week's time at the public forum.
Yeah, hasn't that been the schedule we've been going toward? If we moved it to fall, it would be a change, right, Lynn? I mean, what does the MSBA think we're moving to?
They think that we're moving to, you mean in terms of an opening, school opening?
No, a town vote. And what's the
they think we're doing it in the spring.
Yeah, okay. So we need to just remind people of that schedule as part of this context. So so we're staying on schedule with what we're not accelerating. We were, we're staying on schedule.
I like that message actually as content, as that it's a steady, not accelerated, not behind. You are meeting the deadlines that you set. If somehow you can articulate that, I think it shows good management, that people often don't attribute to government work. So sorry, I'm just being, and so I think where you can say, even in your opening remarks, this meeting is based on our schedule that we've been adhering to and meeting all the deadlines. I think that's a very good point, Tim.
So if you want me to do that, Anime, I'll do that part of it. But Lynn, I need Left Field to give me the timeline laid out the way we just did. And I need it like, if I'm gonna do that, I need that like by the end of the week so I can get back to you with my comments and we can get it all cleaned up.
I can show, we have that on a schedule already, but I can show it to you. I
Okay.
can share it on the screen right now if you want.
All right, why don't you do that?
But you know what, I have a question here, this conceptual cost summary here. I think, can we have a slide that actually shows what it's gonna cost the taxpayer? Because I think that's where it really comes down to. We see big numbers, but people wanna know, what's it gonna cost me? You know what I mean?
Has there been, I don't know whether, I had mentioned this to Mike a while ago, but I don't know whether he got to Christine. Has there been a discussion around doing the average tax impact at these numbers?
I believe
Mike has spoken to Christine and he does have some information. I don't know if what we're going to be presenting, you know, based on the cost estimates that were just done, I don't think those numbers are going to change drastically, but maybe I'm going to try to get out by tomorrow our spreadsheets on what the comparisons look like of the various options. So maybe he can look at those and see. I think we're in the ballpark of the tax information that he previously got from Christine.
What is the 3.5? What's the square footage of that grades 3.5? New construction at either Wheelock or Dale. Like, what's the square footage roughly? 100 and.
Tina, do you have that in your head? Sorry, I'll look it up.
115,000 or something.
No, it was for the 3 to 5. It's about 132,000.
Because we
And
just
then the grades, yeah.
I mean, we've just done 3 of these around, and they're coming in basically, depending on how much sustainability, $620 to $620, $600 to $620, or $640 if you put a lot of sustainability in. So you said it's 130,000?
131. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm coming in with much bigger numbers if your numbers are going to hold up the same as the ones we've been seeing. But so
yeah, Tim, we're happy to share. We had PM plus C plus Fogarty run the estimates, and we went through them with them last week. So happy to share and get your feedback.
Can you send those out to me?
Yeah, we got some reconciled. So we had a reconcile meeting on Friday, and they updated their numbers. And you know, the cost for the building itself is pretty consistent because they're working off of the space summary template number of the 131, and then you know the site is where costs are up and down a bit.
Right.
Not including the ad renos and those kind of things.
Yeah. Okay. That would be, because that to the question about tax impact, that
yeah.
The number I had heard, but I don't want to like say it because I'm not positive, was pretty considerable.
Yes.
Based on I assume based on these costs that I'm seeing here on the screen. So, you know, but I don't know how accurate. I don't know who gave what the did Lynn spitball what the MSBA contribution would be, because it's not our reimbursement rate. It's probably 10 or 15 basis points less than that.
Yes, that's what this column that you see on the screen, that's from the, we're working with the new numbers now, but I did end up adding that estimated project cost.
No, but how much did you say the MSBA reimbursement was? How much less than what's our base rate?
Our base rate is 38.94, I think.
But like our net rate will probably be.
I was using
25.
Between 20 and 25.
Okay, good. Yeah. And so Anna Mae, if you want, we can get the tax impact. Just
Well, can I just say something? I'm sorry, because I am not part of any of these big committees, but there's no way school committee, I just want to speak as a resident on behalf of asking representatives to vote on our behalf without really knowing what something is going to impact individual people.
Yeah.
Even if it's a range, it's an unfair position to put Tim, Jess, Anna Mae, those are my 3 pals on the school committee. I don't know the other people as well, but to me, if you don't have it, you have to abstain to vote. You can't commit yourself to something that you don't understand.
Yeah.
It's very, so I don't know how you feel about it, Tim and Anna Mae, but if I were you and I had run for office and it was my personal reputation, I could not go forward without this being clarified. You still have plenty of time to do it, but I think that it needs to be run down. Sorry, I don't want to speak for you two, but I know that you have relationships with a lot of different people on these groups, but I think if I were you, I would need to have a little bit more understanding of what I was asking my neighbors to contribute.
Yeah, and I think that's why I asked that
when this vote comes, you are setting the course of the direction that we need to take for the town in the next 10 months.
Exactly.
So I'm sorry just to say that, but I think it becomes, when you're in the middle of the weeds with the project, you forget that there are individuals who are going to be voting a week after this forum on a pretty substantial commitment going forward for a very good project that I'm all for. I don't want anyone to get that impression, but I think it's important. And
you're absolutely correct, Tracy. That's why I've asked if we could get a slide that actually gets us to the tax implication for the individual, because that's really where it's going to count.
So Lynn, if you can get the new, whenever the new numbers are and what the new, your estimated town share would be for the two different versions, I'll talk to Mike about calling Christine about getting the tax impact. That's not that hard to do once you give us the town share. She's already, I think she's already done it.
Yeah, he has, and I think we're ending up in the same range of tax impacts. The same range of costs that'll get us the same tax impact.
Yeah. So we can have that for the 13th if you want. It would just be another line item or on this slide, I think.
Yeah, we can do that. Can I step back for a second to the schedule information? I have 2 versions of the schedule. I have one that shows us doing a special town meeting in early September. That's if the town doesn't want to vote prior to MSBA voting at the end of June in the spring town meeting. And then I have one showing them voting in advance of the June MSBA board meeting. So I have it shown both ways.
So what is the MSBA board if Larry starts his schematic design in November? What's the
MSBA? Yeah, the MSBA board for schematic design is June.
The June board?
June 30th, I think, or the 23rd. I'm not sure which Wednesday they're going to hold it on because June has 5 weeks next year.
But I think if I heard Tim, we would be trying to hit, so they go in 2-month increments, right? So it would be the April board we would be trying to be in front of.
You won't be able to do that.
Right, because you have to submit February 20th or something for the April board.
You would the best you'll probably do is June if there's a June board.
I think what Tim was saying is that you needed to get your cost estimates in advance. If we were going to go for a spring town meeting vote, we'd probably have to have the estimates ready to go so that they could put the amount on the article.
So we would know the deal in time for the spring town meeting. The issue is going to be politically, Anna Mae and Tim, is a lot of people, it's nice to say to people, we've already got the MSBA board vote in hand, and because even though it's going to happen and the vote could be contingent on the MSBA board, it just creates that level of uncertainty that projects usually don't need when you're going in front of a big audience. But so the question will be, you know, does everything kind of wait until June? I don't know if there's a board meeting in June next year. They haven't come out with the schedule yet, but assuming there is, you know, do we wait until June and do special town meetings and votes in June, which, you know, that's not the best time to do them.
Well, that's why I moved it to September 7th. I think I have it down as
Which is
special
not a-
town meeting vote.
That's also a crappy time because people are just getting back to school. Like, that's
Yeah,
why.
I think there's some unknowns on this one, but I think the conversation we had earlier, at this stage, I'd rather target June and miss and hit September than target September and miss and now we're in January.
I agree because
Unless there's, you know, something blatant that says that's not realistic. And I'm totally defer to the judgment of the, you know, the experts on that. But for purposes of next week, right now, you know, if June is reasonable, that's what I would communicate as to where we are.
A lot of people think that if you're having a spring meeting, the spring town meeting, the beginning of May, and then you turn around and do a special town meeting in June, that why didn't you just do it in May? And MSBA is not going to vote until at least the 23rd, if not the 30th of June. It'll be one of those dates. And so if you're waiting until after MSBA votes, then you can't have a vote until July, and that's in the middle of the summer, and that's why I put it at the beginning of September. If you're going to vote earlier than MSBA's vote, then you might as well do it at the spring town meeting.
I think that's the only plan we can for now do. And then I think that we don't want to wait. And first of all, early September is not a time to do special town meetings and votes. That's not a good time for votes and town. So I think we should plan on that scenario of either the May town meeting or a special in June before the MSBA board, and just realize, you know, just deal with, we'll know if we're on the board agenda like 6 weeks before. So it's not like, it's really it's a pro forma vote. There's no question once we know we're on the agenda. So, or, you know, a month before anyway. So it's just it's the optics of not having the vote in hand when you go in front of the town. But we'll know it's going to be voted on. I mean, unless, you know, 15 years of history and precedent don't get followed. So I think that I think Tim's right that we need to just say targeting spring, because that's what we've been saying. And now we'll have to deal with those logistics. If we would decide to suspend it till the fall, we can do that later on. But there's no, you know, September isn't a good time to vote, so you're probably talking October. So I think we should go with the spring. That's my opinion.
I mean, I think the spring is better, but I mean, I have done votes in September, usually more like mid-September, not as early September.
Yeah, I mean, that's something
that
we
have
can
gone
talk
well
about.
as well.
Yeah, we can talk about it at the time if we need to exercise it.
So one way to finesse it is simply say the spring town meeting, and we're looking at whether it would be in May or June.
And we're just not sure yet. I
Right.
mean, that part. I mean, we're just trying to give people the broad context. So
I would say, Gina, if you can check the school building committee notes from June 17th, because I thought my handwritten notes here said we announced or talked about the special town meeting in the fall of 2021.
Yeah, I will look.
So you might double check just to make sure that messaging in terms of saying we're going to stay on the spring town meeting is consistent with what we've said previously.
Okay. Yeah.
Or we just say we acknowledge that it's still a work in progress, which I think is where you're headed, Tim.
yeah, but setting a time, but it doesn't have to be exact at this point.
Yep.
And then, so we'll work on getting these tax impact. So Lynn and Gina, can you get these new numbers with the, add a column into this that says estimated town share? Well,
Yes.
I don't know whether these I don't know whether these are accurate to what your new estimates are, but
They're
How does
close.
that get done towards the average, I suppose, the Medfield average cost or per
they
thousand?
do it, they do it to the average
Okay,
home assessment.
$1,000.
So they
Okay.
usually pick like the middle
Yeah.
home. And then, so that's Christine will say, you know, for the average home, it's, you know, I don't know, $100 or $12 a thousand or whatever it is. And then we'll just multiply it out by
okay, good.
whatever the number is.
Yeah, I think that'll be important. Great.
Yeah, and Mike was developing those numbers. I remember him
Yeah.
talking about that. I don't know, maybe late May, early June,
Yeah, I thought so.
first pass.
I'm going to give him a call after this and tell him what we've talked about.
Okay, beautiful. But it sounds
And-
like you've got a concise presentation.
Right. So I
Framework.
think we go around the presentation that way. So I'll do a lead in.
Yeah.
I'll talk to the timeline, which you guys are going to get me, Lynn.
Okay. I'm gonna send you the schedule then that shows the meeting in line with around the date of this, the Springtown meeting. And I'll send you that schedule since I have it.
So Tim B does intro, timeline, context. Then I'm going to essentially turn it over to Jeff, finding that out, because I don't see then, Anime, if I do that, do you have a role?
No, then I think Jeff goes into the ed benefits.
Yeah.
And
Ed
then
benefits
and then Larry goes into those neutral slides, right? Traffic level goes through those. And then Lynn or Gina will go through costs. And then, but then I suppose at the end, kind of wrap it up in terms of these are the issues that school committee has to consider, you know, the ed benefits, the cost, and that, and then open it up to questions. How about that?
So what in the end was you, Anime, just sort of like a wrap up?
Yeah, in terms of what school committee now has to consider.
Right. I think that's a great. So Jeff will do ed benefits and his recommendation
Yes.
on an educational basis. Then Larry's going to say basically that the logistics. And Larry, you need slides for that, a couple of slides that show the neutralness of the decision in terms of the sites, just to.
Yeah, I think what we could do there is essentially have one of each slide with all the configurations, sort of a matrix of site plans,
I
and
agree.
say we've looked at it a bunch of different ways, and it generally is, you know, and give a 2-minute thing, and that's it. And we're not describing the schemes at all.
Yeah, you're going to just say, in the end, this decision doesn't impact our ability to pick a site.
Yep.
And then Lynn, you're going to do the costs and the town share, which you need to get info from us, and then Anime is going to close.
Yes.
So do you guys want to get this draft presentation? We should take another look at it before the 13th, right?
Oh, yeah.
Can you get something out by, can we get all this stuff out by the end of the week and then set something up for Monday or Tuesday?
We have our 3 o'clock working group meeting that we could use
When is
that time.
When is that, Monday?
Monday at
afternoon.
3.
Can we aim to get the presentation out to folks on Friday? Feels okay to me, but Lynn, you've got a little bit of work on your side with the estimating costs and things.
Yeah, I'm working on that, so yes, we can have it
Okay.
done by then.
So when
So
should we reconvene? Monday or Tuesday? I mean, if we get it by Friday, we kind of digest it all, maybe submit questions, and then come back together Monday or Tuesday.
Well, what
Yeah.
we were saying was Monday afternoon, we have a normal working group meeting with the leadership team, and our intent was to walk through the estimating numbers in detail. We could also then follow up with this discussion, or have a subsequent meeting where we say, okay, with 3 o'clock we meet with the working group, and at 4 o'clock we meet with this group. Something like that, if that works for you folks. Or we could meet separately and say, okay, Monday at 1 or some other neutral time.
I suppose it would be good after you guys meet with the working group, and could everyone here meet at 4 that on Monday? Is 4
Okay.
o'clock a good time?
Works for me. I have a hard stop at 5, but yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to sit in on the
I'll just say that the working group never is over in an hour.
But maybe with this on hand, or maybe it can kind of transition, you know?
I was going to say.
Yeah.
But that'd be great. That'd be great then.
Because really our focus, Lynn, with the working group is just bring them up to speed on the estimating.
Correct. Yes.
And this all ties in and connects, and maybe we can, you know, that'll move things along.
Yeah.
And then just so you guys consider, the expectation is we are presenting the estimates to the school building committee on Wednesday night, the 12th. And that then is ahead by a day of the school committee public forum on the Thursday, the 13th.
Cool. Tim Knight, Tracy, can you guys do Monday at 4?
I'm
Yeah.
okay. It's Tim.
Okay, cool.
Before you close, I just had 3 quick things on the presentation. I kind of felt under the 3 to 5 that there could be more strength put on the management piece and cost savings of economies of scale. Like some of the educational stuff, I think if you're a teacher and you're really into it, really is important, but just the part of managing staff, being all down there together, there's like a management piece that Jeff, to me, resonated to me that I felt could strengthen it a little bit. It's up for you, you guys know better. I felt that I don't know if you talked about it ahead of time, but I think that it's an obvious question that somebody will write is really what is the enrollment increase that you're asking us to increase the building size? I don't think it needs to be a bullet point, but I think it needs to be something that you can speak to more specifically in numbers, because it's just, to me, there's no connection between the increase in the enrollment and the size of the building. That seems to be one of the big the positives, advantages of it, that to do it. So those were just my 2 off the cuff things when I read it as someone who's not as involved. And then the other part I thought is at the end, Anna Mae, when you close, people still after the forum will have an opportunity to reach out to you with feedback to school committee members. Are you encouraging that, or you want
Yes,
to?
absolutely. Yes, we are.
All right, so they're going to do that to your individual school committee emails, or you want them to do it to the Dale Street one, and how that stuff gets to the broader school committee, that you have it so that you all can see where people and residents are coming out with the questions.
Right. I would say, just like the mascot, people have been emailing the school committee chair email address, and then I disseminate it to all the.
All right, so then you'll say, instead of using the Dale Street School Gmail account, you want them to use your email. I mean, just think it through. You don't have to decide.
Yeah. No, you're right.
You know, to give people the direction, and that there's an opportunity that you all know on the school committee what's coming in.
Yeah.
And it's organized. I don't know how I know there's all rules and regulations on how all that information is. So, but that it's clear to people what they can do.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, because I think in the past we have had a final slide that gives, if you have further input, please send emails to XYZ.
Perfect. Thank you.
And we can set that up to be that the.
Yeah. All right. Sounds like we have a plan.
Yeah, I was going to say, good discussion.
All right, wonderful.
Thanks.
Well, thank you, everyone. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
I second. Good night.
Okay, awesome. I'll take roll call and then we'll close out. Tim Bonfatti,
Yes.
Tim Knight,
Yes.
Tracy Rogers. She out. And Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. See you Monday at 4.
See you guys.
Ciao.
Sounds great.
Great. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
I need your help for the rest of that thing. They send you an email to get back on.
Wait. For what? Wait a minute. I have another meeting now.
Okay, well,